On today's show, we'll give you a Habs prospects update. We'll talk about Lane Hutson, Juraj Slafkovsky, Ivan Demidov, all on today's episode of Locked On NHL Prospects.
You are Locked On NHL Prospects, part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Hello and welcome back to Locked On NHL Prospects, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. On this podcast, we break down everything prospects related for you 5 days a week, Monday to Friday. I'm Hage QMJHL and crossover scout for Elite Prospects with Sebastian High, USHL and crossover scout for Elite Prospects. And on today's show, we'll be breaking down the Habs prospects in detail. We'll give you the update on the NHL prospects, Juraj Slafkovsky, Lane Hutson, and Emil Heineman in the first segment. Then in the second segment, we'll talk about the AHL. The Laval Rocket are on fire right now with some key players playing key parts. Joshua Roy, Logan Mailloux, Engstrom, Owen Beck, and a lot more in the second segment. And then in the third segment, we'll talk about some outside of the pro level prospects. We'll talk about Ivan Demidov, Michael Hage, Vinzenz Rohrer, Oliver Kapanen, Sam Harris, and a lot more. But before we get into any of that, though, today's episode is brought to you by Indeed. Still searching for a great candidate for your company? Don't search, just match with Indeed. If you're watching on YouTube, as usual, remember to like and subscribe. Let us know in the comments what you think of the episode and what you want us to talk about next. And if you're listening on your favorite podcasting platform, please leave us a rate and review and make sure to make us your first listen of the day. Alrighty, so let's get started right away with this Habs prospects update. And by the way, this is going to be a series where we cover a different team every week regarding prospects and give you regular updates. We'll mainly focus on the teams that are in contention for a lottery pick, Chicago, Anaheim, San Jose, the usual suspects. But for the moment, we'll start off with the Habs, and we'll start off with Lane Hutson, who's currently in a Calder race here as one of the top rookies in the league. He's averaging like 23, 24 minutes a night in the NHL right now. He's up to 11 points so far on the season.
Indeed.
After this past game. And he's been fantastic so far, right?
He's been awesome. And as you mentioned, he's been playing massive minutes. He's not exactly had a consistent pairing mate this season. I think he's played the most with David Savard, but we've seen a lot of offensive zone starts with Mike Matheson. We've seen games with Caden Gooley. We've seen periods with Arbor Jacki and Justin Barron. And wherever he's been playing in the lineup and whoever he's been playing with, he's been able to create offense going forward. He's so comfortable enjoying the rush and activating when lanes open up. And he's been fantastic with the puck on his stick. Definitely a little bit restricted to the perimeter still at this point in terms of his fancy footwork and getting around defensive structures. He struggled a little bit more to be incisive and get through them and into them, but the playmaking game has certainly had some very bright flashes, and he's tied for fourth on the team in points as a rookie playing massive minutes, as you mentioned. He's been really, really good.
Yeah, 100%. What's really translated so far is just the fact that the things that he's been doing at every level have continued to occur. He's still a dynamic force from the blue line. He's still shifting defenses with his rotations. He's still activating with the right timing and the right purpose. He's finding very creative solutions to complex problems in the NHL to the point where teams have had to kind of pre-scout him and give him some focus because of how often he's playing and how often he has a puck. Teams are starting to have to figure out, how do we defend Lane Hutson? How do we prevent him from being effective? Because when he is effective, he's creating scoring chances left and right. I think he leads the league right now for defensemen, or is at near the top of the league for defensemen this year in scoring chances created per 60, which is ridiculous given that he's a 5'10" rookie defenseman. But yeah, his season so far has been phenomenal, and he's just going to build off of this and continue to be an impactful defenseman at the NHL level. The defense is still an issue. I think there's no hiding that. But in terms of overall net benefit impact, when Lane Hutson's on the ice, every single player on the ice needs to be careful where they are, how their positions, who's behind their backs, because Lane Hutson sees pretty much everything offensively. It's ridiculous.
He really does. And I will add, actually, on the defensive end, on the cycle, definitely things can break down for him where he just gets boxed out relatively easily. But against the rush, I actually have quite liked the progression I've seen from Lane Hutson so far this season. He's been very active, keeping very tight gaps. His stick work is really, really good. Like, it's already, I think, above NHL average in terms of stick work. He's getting stick on puck very regularly. And I saw on TVA Sport during yesterday or in the game against Columbus. As some stats, like some defensive stats, where Lane Hutson was actually leading the team in, and a lot of those were rush defending and in terms of breaking up plays against attacking with speed.
For sure. But moving on to Juraj Slafkovsky, who's had a decent start to the season points-wise, but up to in terms of the standards he's gotten Habs fans used to, there is some setback. He was benched in the game yesterday against Columbus as of recording this. And yeah, I think the main issue with that is Slafkovsky is struggling to score. I think he has 1 goal so far this season. Not really up there in terms of production on the goal scoring side. He's been putting up a lot of assists, most of them secondary, most of them a result of Suzuki and Caulfield's play when he has been playing with them. Now the lines have shifted a tiny bit. He's still on the first line with Suzuki and Doc now. But there have been some struggles. He's still winning his battles down low. He's still outworking opponents along the boards and getting off the boards with the puck and all that good stuff. But there has been some sort of setback in the sense of, getting to the middle of the ice, getting scoring chances and scoring looks for himself and converting, most importantly, on those chances. I wouldn't worry too much if I'm Habs fans regarding Slafkovsky. These dips in productions happen. He's in his 3rd year in the NHL, but he said it himself. His standards are higher now than they were last year or the year before. He needs to be better. He wants to be better. And with the mindset that Slafkovsky's gotten Habs fans used to so far in his career, this is a prospect with an elite mindset. He understands what's expected of him, and more often than not, he overcomes adversity, overcomes challenges, and pushes through them. So I wouldn't be too worried. But lastly, to close off this segment, I do want to focus on Emil Heineman because we don't get to talk about him that much on this podcast. And he's been pretty good so far this year, albeit in a limited role, but he's been averaging, about 14 to 16 minutes a night?
A lot less, actually. Like he's been averaging like 8 to 11 minutes. He's been very much playing a fourth line role for the Habs this year, but he's been very effective when he's been on the ice in the fourth line capacity. The shooting threat is certainly something that is quite dangerous, even off the rush. Like in that game against Columbus, he unleashed a couple slap shots, one of which also led to that Lucas Condata goal to extend the Habs lead in the 3rd period. And he's been really solid. I think like the defensive habits are pretty decent. I think the defensive involvement could maybe take a little bit of a step in terms of being a little bit more active and engaging players on the back check. But overall, I think he's been a really solid piece for the Habs as a rookie this season.
Yeah, absolutely. Very impactful in terms of his goal scoring skill. He's gotten better at catching passes and making plays in motion. Which is showing well for his career, because that was kind of the big setback. But more importantly, I think the positional sense in this game has really improved. He's gone from a below average defensive player with issues staying inside structure to a really structurally sound player from that fourth line. It's made him very impactful, and it's made him a likely key candidate to stay with the Habs full time. I don't really see a situation where Heineman gets pushed out of the lineup by anyone in particular. I mean, there have been some rotations, there have been some players coming in and out of the lineup. Heineman's stuck. It's mainly because of those improvements. He's no longer kind of a jump the zone and try to get a breakaway and score type of forward. He's really a play inside structure, get off the wall with the puck, take some shots from mid range, recover rebounds, and kind of keep plays alive type of forward. And that's a lot more of an NHL forward than what we've seen previously from Heineman. I remember being very skeptical about Heineman's overall potential and ability to become an impact NHLer. But what do you feel about his impact so far with the Habs?
I think it's been solid, right? I think that this is a player that could be molded into a PK specialist with some goal scoring upside at even strength, and maybe even a second power play role if there are any holes that open up with injuries in the lineup. That said, I'll be interested to see if he does stick in the lineup once Raphael Harvey-Pinard and Patrick Laine reinsert themselves into the formation, because I think he's definitely one of the players that could get pushed out as a result of that. I think Lucas Condata is definitely the first one that would get sent back down to Laval in that case. But if he is able to stick and really also distribute the goal scoring talent throughout the lineup and be able to have a triggerman on every single line at the NHL level, I think that's a very dangerous weapon for the Habs to have in their lineup in this rebuilding season.
Yeah, absolutely. That wraps us up for our first segment. We'll get into our second segment. We're talking about the AHL boys. The Laval Rocket are absolutely tearing it up right now in the AHL. It's mainly due to a young roster full of very promising prospects. We'll talk about Joshua Roy, Logan Mailloux, Owen Beck, and a lot more in just a second. But just before, a quick word from our sponsors at Prize Picks.
PrizePicks is the best place to get real money sports action. With over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings, PrizePicks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on at least two players for a shot to win up to 100 times your cash. Run your game all season long with PrizePicks. PrizePicks is the only real money daily fantasy platform with an injury insurance policy, so your lineups stay in place even if one of your players gets injured. If your player leaves after the first half and doesn't return, PrizePicks keeps your lineup live. PrizePicks also offers weekly promotions that can lead to massive payouts like Taco Tuesday. Each Tuesday, PrizePicks discounts select player projections up to 25% to provide even more value for your lineups. Do you think Connor McDavid's going to score more than 1.5 goals next week? Austin Matthews even more than that? Make your picks on PrizePicks and compete with your friends in daily fantasy sports action. Download the app today and use code LOCKEDONNHL to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. You don't even need to win your swing to guarantee that bonus. PrizePicks, run your game.
Alrighty, so moving on to our second segment here, we'll be talking about the AHL guys in Montreal. We'll talk about Joshua Roy, Logan Mailloux, Owen Beck, Adam Engstrom. I mean, this Laval team is absolutely stacked with prospects, and usually young teams, as we're seeing in Montreal right now, don't tend to be as impactful because they're still learning. They're learning to win as a group. They're learning to develop their game and play off of each other. Each of them has their own growing pains, some areas to develop. But so far in Laval, it's been an absolute tear. They're 12-2 right now at the top of the AHL in the standings. And it's mainly due to the young guys. I mean, Joshua Roy is playing really well. Logan Mailloux, now that he's back with the Laval Rocket, has been once again just absolutely tearing it up offensively. But Owen Beck as well is in there as a two-way impactful forward who impacts the game in all three zones, makes some decent plays, and puts up some points. So let's talk about these guys. And I want to start off with Joshua Roy because he was a guy who everyone kind of expected was going to be in the NHL. His role seemed more or less cemented with the Habs. He had a decent first couple of games in the NHL preseason, but then it just seemed like he took his foot off the gas and then just kind of stopped trying. And Martin St. Louis was never gonna stand for that, so he got sent down. He's been kind of riding the pine. Other guys got called up before him, Lucas Condotta, for example. But he's been really good for the Laval Rocket, a key part of their offense, right?
Absolutely, he has. He's joint lead in points on the team with Alex Barré-Boulet, who continues to be a demon at the AHL level. Barré-Boulet has 13 points in 9 games, and Roy has 13 points in 14 games. So he has an extra 5 games in there, but he's been really, really solid. He's been consistently scoring from his office in like the mid slot. He really likes his flybys in that area, and he's been getting found there really consistently this season, whether it be from passes from ABB or Logan Mailloux or even Owen Beck at times on the power play. He's been very active in his favorite spots in the offensive zone and getting open very consistently. And overall, he's just been an energetic player, playing the game smartly, playing the game the right way, the exact thing that you want to see from a player like Joshua Roy in response to being sent down when it wasn't perhaps the expectation going into this season. But he's not the only player on this roster doing well. As you mentioned, Logan Mailloux is ripping it up offensively with 12 points in 9 games, 4 goals. He's been just like ripping shots from the point like he always does. But I've seen a lot more, I guess, nuance in his on-puck game this season. Would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. He's been, throwing in deception, kind of manipulating defenses in front of him. He's not defaulting to releases. He's able to fake a shot, roll his wrists, go to the backhand, or escape on the forehand with a leg push, and then just kind of change the angle on his shot to give himself a fighting chance. He scored a couple goals this way in the offensive zone, whether it's on the power play or at 5-on-5. So those progressions are good. The defense is still abysmal, I'm afraid. It's still a major issue in his game. It mainly has to do with the processing, the lack of urgency at times in his game, or sometimes just being over urgent, and not kind of realizing how much time and space he has to work with. It's an issue with scanning habits. It's an issue with processing and reads. Mailloux's hockey sense isn't really the best, but he makes up for that with absolutely fantastic tools. He's a great skater. He's a big body. He loves to throw hits. He's physical. He covers a lot of ice, and he has the offensive skill to boot. So, in terms of tools overcoming the toolkit, it's very rare that we see it happen at a high level. The only one I could really think of is maybe Rasmus Ristolainen, or someone like that. That might be what Mailloux's upside tops out as. But I still don't see Mailloux as a long-term option as a top right shot defenseman. I don't think that's a realistic expectation from him, and that's fine. If he's a number 4 defenseman moving forward in his career in the NHL, that's great. I just don't think the expectations need to be way too high with Mailloux, given, people see the tools, see the highlights, and they think, okay, this guy has a lot of potential. But thinking the game is really what makes you work. And speaking of which, Owen Beck has been really, really good this year, right?
He really has been. It's been a smooth transition for Beck, and I can't say either of us have been overly surprised by that. This was one of the smartest players in the OHL for the past 3 years running, yep. And a player that plays with so much pace and maturity in his game, going both ways. He's mature in the offensive zone. He's not a player that gifts away possession, and defensively, he's a player that is so effective, whether it be on the back check, whether it be while defending the cycle. He's constantly getting in positions to break up plays. I think that his coverage of passing lanes against the cycle is one of the best on Laval already, and he's a rookie on that team. Mm-hmm. Certainly been impressive this season, and he has 3 goals and 11 points in 14 games to boot. That's a fantastic start to an AHL career on the offensive side, and I don't think it's going to take Owen Beck very long to cement himself as an NHLer either. I'd give him maybe a year and a half, and I think he'll be a regular on the Montreal Canadiens.
For sure. I can already see him be kind of a high-end 3C, especially once Christian Dvorak is inevitably either traded off or goes to free agency. I mean, those are likely scenarios of him, and Beck is pretty much the best descendant of a Christian Dvorak type that you can get in your system. Moving forward, we have Adam Engstrom as well. Has been doing fairly well in the AHL. His progression has been fairly good. He's a smart puck-moving defenseman. Loves to use his high-end skating in order to kind of get through layers of pressure, get into the neutral zone, and make a play on the entry. The defense has been okay with Engstrom from what I've seen, but it's not been anything kind of fantastic either on that side. He's still kind of limited by the same issues that kind of plague Logan Mailloux. It's the hockey sense, the reads, the processing. Defensively isn't really the best, but the offensive reads have been slowly but surely creeping forward. So Engstrom and Mailloux are kind of in the same boat of trying to get their tools to overcome their toolkit rather than kind of letting the toolkit improve itself. In either case, there are going to be some hurdles. But I'm still a believer in Engstrom's potential as a prospect. I don't think he's going to be a top pair defenseman, but I could see him become a number 4, number 5, someone who rotates even on your third pair, that kind of thing. We also have a goalie to talk about. Jakub Dobeš has been really good so far this year with Laval. Talk me through his numbers and what's got us sold on Dobeš's upside so far.
Yeah, so Dobeš has played 7 games. He's been splitting the crease evenly with Connor Hughes, who's been fantastic for the Laval Rocket. Dobeš has a 911 save percentage so far this season and a 6-1 record, the same record that his tandem partner has, and Hughes has logged a 935 save percentage this season. But with Jakub Dobeš, I think something that a lot of Habs fans will have also noticed throughout preseason is that he's a very calm, composed goaltender who allows his team to really build confidence throughout a game. In preseason, I thought he outplayed both Samuel Montembeault and Caden Primo in the couple games that he played. There was one game especially that just stood out massively, and it's kind of been more of the same in Laval this season. There's still a couple raw aspects in his game. There's certain times where he just loses track of the puck and can panic a little bit. But most of the time, especially when he sees the puck, he's really calm. He keeps himself positioned very well in the crease. He's an agile goaltender, explosive lateral movement, and he also doesn't really lose his post very often. So I think he's a solid goaltending prospect. I'd give him like a 1B type of NHL upside. Obviously, with goaltenders, you never know if that'll take 2 years to reach that or 7. But I definitely think he has that kind of upside in his locker.
Yeah, and he's got personality too. I mean,
Absolutely.
he windmills his glove saves. He celebrates hard. He's a very fun goalie. The way we like goalies, just a bit crazy on the edges. Honorable mentions in terms of interesting prospects: Luke Tuck, Jared Davidson have both been having good seasons so far this year. But we've run out of time for the second segment. We'll get into the third segment where we talk about the non-NHL or AHL prospects: Ivan Demidov, Michael Hage, Oliver Kapanen, Sam Harris, and a lot more in just a sec. But just before, a quick word from our sponsors at Indeed. Here at Locked On, we're driven by the search for better. But when it comes to hiring, the best way to search for a candidate isn't to search at all. Don't search, match instead with Indeed. If you need to hire, Indeed is the best place to get it done. Indeed is your matching and hiring platform with over 350 million global monthly visitors, according to Indeed data, and a matching engine that helps you find quality candidates fast. You can dish the busy work and use Indeed for scheduling, screening, and messaging all in one place so you can connect with candidates faster. And Indeed doesn't just help you hire faster. 93% of employers agree that Indeed delivers the highest quality matches compared to other job sites, according to a recent Indeed survey. I got my day job through Indeed, and it was very useful in terms of making sure that you know exactly what you're heading into. It lets you know what the company's searching for in terms of qualifications, in terms of qualities, and exactly what the job description is, on top of just knowing exactly what the salary is. So you know exactly what you're heading into. There's no surprises. I can only imagine how that system helps employers hire better employees by not kind of hiding things behind interviews and all that stuff. You know, upfront what you're looking for. So that already eliminates so much of the mess of hiring and gets you the right candidates right away. So right now, listeners of the show can get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/locked-on. Just go to Indeed.com/locked-on right now and support our show by saying that you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Again, that's Indeed.com/locked-on. Terms and conditions apply, but if you need to hire, you need Indeed. All right, so let's close things off here in our third segment by talking about the non-NHL or AHL prospects in the Habs system. We'll start off with Ivan Demidov, the big name in this list, the top prospect in the pool right now for the Montreal Canadiens overall. He's been having a pretty interesting season so far. With SKA in the KHL. His point totals are up there. His ice time is way down. This is an interesting situation because it seems like every time Demidov's on the ice, he creates something and then just goes back to the bench for 5, 6, 7 minutes at a time. So what's your take on Demidov's season so far?
It's been wacky, and I think we knew that was going to be the case coming into this season. As a young player with SK St. Petersburg, I think wacky was what we could really hope for. It could have been a lot worse in terms of like not even being able like to crack the lineup whatsoever. I mean, he could have just been like perpetually the 14th forward this season. So at least he's been getting onto the ice, and at least in the last 10 games, it's been relatively consistent. He's been playing like 3 games he's played between 8 and 10 minutes, but the rest has basically all been between 13 and 16. So he's been playing pretty regular minutes by his standards this season. The last 6 games have been held pointless, so he's on a bit of a point drought at the moment. But as you mentioned, he's still creating a bunch of offense with the puck on his stick. There are few more dynamic players in the entire KHL than Ivan Demidov. And while SKA St. Petersburg did have a certain dry run there, I mean, they only have 1 win in their last 7 games, which is shocking by their standards. They've lost all of the 6 others. It's a dry spell for the entire team. He's far from the only player that is struggling at the moment. And he's certainly a special prospect. And while it is a dry spell at the moment, I don't think he's going to be kept off the score sheet for very much longer. He has far too much talent. He's far too intelligent offensively. And I think one thing that I've noticed a lot this season, specifically in his development, is how he's been able to also be able to play through contact in the offensive zone rather than just evade and get around it with his favorite 10-2 skating style, which is all about that circular motion to get around defensive opponents. He's been actually initiating contact a bit more, lowering the shoulder rather than just going for the pure flair, the pure skill elements, and that's something I've loved to see.
Absolutely. I think the other really interesting aspect with Demidov is the off-puck movement. He's been creating a ton with that. And it was already like a major strength in his draft year. He's just further expanded on it, which is really interesting. But we need to talk about Michael Hage as well, who's been having a phenomenal season so far with the University of Michigan in the NCAA. And what's really interesting is that heading into this season, I don't think anyone really knew what to expect from Hage. Was it going to be a first-line center? Was it going to be a second-line winger? Was it going to be lower down the lineup and work his way up? It wasn't really too certain, but basically off rip, he started off on the second line, worked his way up to the first line, and has been the key offensive fulcrum for the Michigan Wolverines so far this season. Talk me through the point totals and what we both liked from him as so much in his draft year, and what's changed since.
Yeah, so far this season, he's at exactly a point a game with 5 goals and 9 points through 9 games with the University of Michigan. It hasn't been the highest scoring iteration of the Michigan team that we've seen in the past couple seasons. There's not quite as much elite offensive talent, but Michael Hage certainly is the most dynamic, consistent creator in that team. What we loved about this player in his draft year is just the raw tools. So much to love there, whether it be well above average skating, well above average handling, well above average shooting. The playmaking game has always had really nice flashes, and there's been a bit more consistency to that this season, which is nice to see. And overall, the offensive brain, whether it be an off-puck movement, in deception, in implementing delays in his rushes, it's all quite refined. One of the things that certainly is taking a big step in the last 9 months has been his ability to get to the middle and drive the middle lane rather than just be forced to the perimeter, which was very much a core of his early draft years tape that we were scouting. And that's certainly something that he will need to further expand upon as well. He needs to be a very middle-driven player, and I definitely think that developing as a center is the best way to leverage all of his tools and get him the most puck touches. And he's been very good this season, but he slowed it down a little bit in terms of offensive production. He's only had a goal and an assist in his last 4 games with Michigan after he had 7 points in the 5 previous games before that. But still, it's been a solid start to the season for Michael Hage. But talk me through the next player that we wanted to focus on here, Sam Harris, because he's been scoring for fun with the University of Denver with 10 goals and 16 points in just 11 games.
Absolutely. And Harris, his shot is good. Don't get me wrong. It's a great release. But it's just slightly above average. So why is he scoring this much in the NCAA right now for Denver, which is a top program, while he's playing third line minutes? I mean, he's scoring a goal per game from the third line. It's pretty ridiculous. Well, the reason for that is the off-puck movement. It's the timing of his rotations, of his routes to the net, the way he times his pathways to the slot with the rotations, with his teammates going around the net and all that stuff. That's how he's scoring his goals. And I think that has a lot of value in the NHL. Maybe he's almost definitely not going to be a top 6 forward. I don't see that in his skill set. He's not a high-end skater, a high-end passer. His skills across the board are just above average or average, right? But everything he does has to do with timing, has to do with movement, has to do with playing in size, structure. And Denver is a very, very, very structured team. I'd say it's the most structured team, in my opinion, in the NCAA. They play a very rigid structure. Every player needs to stick to it, and they play really well inside of it. And Sam Harris is a great, great, great example of that, in my opinion. And that's why he's scoring so much. He fits inside Denver's structure so well. And I think that's going to kind of translate as he grows, right? He's going to start playing the AHL, learning the Laval structure, get adapted to that, and play inside it. Maybe one day he gets to the NHL, plays a third, fourth line role, adapts to that as well. I wouldn't be surprised if we see Sam Harris on a second power play one day. He has the tools to play a bumper spot. So I've been very interested with him. But speaking of bottom 6 scorers, Tyler Thorpe has been very interesting as well, right?
He absolutely has been. He's a very fun player to watch. He was an overage draft pick just this past draft, and he plays in the WHL with the Vancouver Giants, and he's up to 8 goals and 16 points through 19 games this season. He uses his size very, very well. He's a player that is just an absolute hulking force going forward, but has a lot of deft puck skills as well. It's a combination of hard and soft skill that makes him such a notable player, and he's certainly a guy that has taken a step this season in his development, and that I'm very excited to keep an eye on moving forward. Another player I wanted to give a shout out to is Vinzenz Rohrer, who's been playing with the Zurich Lions in the Swiss National League, and also signed a 1-year contract extension just last week, which will keep him there for next season as well in the 2025-26 campaign. And he's been really solid for that team. In 19 games this season, he has 7 goals and 9 points. He's been averaging about 16 to 17 minutes a night, which is quite a rarity for a player of his age in a league as strong as the Swiss National League and on a team as dominant as Zurich. I mean, they won the championship last season, and he just turned 20 2 months ago. So a very young player, high motor, really intense, some decent puck skills as well. He could also be another potential bottom 6 scoring threat who brings a lot of intensity to the equation. But was there one more player that you wanted to give a shout out to for this final segment, Hattie?
For sure, Oliver Kapanen. Mainly because of his play with the Habs in preseason and in the regular season before being sent back to Sweden. I mean, he played a very mature, very polished game. And he just plays pro hockey. I think he still has some things to learn in terms of when and how to apply pressure. But really, in terms of his on-puck play, every decision's right, every movement's right. I've really, really liked this game, and I'm hoping to see him back with Habs soon. But that wraps things up for today. Thank you very much for tuning in. If you're watching on YouTube, remember to like and subscribe. Let us know in the comments what you thought of the episode and what you want us to talk about next. And if you're listening on your favorite podcasting platform, please leave us a rate and review, and make sure to make us your first listen of the day. For your second listen of the day, make sure to check out Locked On Sports Today. They've got all your news and updates about what's going on around sports. And make sure to tune in for our next episodes as we continue our prospect coverage for the month of November. This has been Hage with Sebastian High, and we hope you tune in next time.